So I have a personal beef or issue with the system, but the man, no, but it is a kind of institution and not a specific institution, but a system. Well, I guess it is a system, but you know what I mean. So anyway, so I am done with a master's program, and the master's program is in the education area, and my undergrad was in business. So besides the learning curve of undergrad to graduate school, there was a very steep learning curve from the way we do business and the way we do education. So I obviously worked in education. I've been through education, so I know that. But as far as the academic side, there was a lot for me to learn, especially in the area of research and everything. That's something that I never touched in undergrad. I think in marketing, that's probably where you'll see it the most. They do have a lot of crossover with some communication majors, and they do a lot of marketing as well, or not marketing, they do research. But the major I was in, all the stuff I was in, the classes I had, like, I never talked about research ever. And so when I got to grad school, the first classes and stuff, it was tough. I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what any of this means. And I think that I had good enough experience in the education area, and I think I was a good enough student to start picking it up and realizing that I had information of what things meant, but I didn't know the name of it. I didn't know the vocabulary and the lingo. So I eventually got onto it. And I think I'm a pretty good writer too, so I think that helped as well. But anyway, so it wasn't too long where I decided I didn't really understand this system. I didn't understand this fixation on, sources and citations and all this. And I've had like some work with APA, and obviously in high school, well, hopefully in high school, they're talking to you a little bit about citations and plagiarism and all that. And so, but I was never great at it. I didn't love it, didn't like thinking about it, and didn't have to do it a lot. And so on this level, it really ramped up my dislike for it. This is part of me being lazy, but also part I didn't get it. And then after I made the decision that I want to pursue a PhD or doctorate, and that I started to really understand the business of research and the benefits of it, then I started looking more into it and understanding how the system works. And I understand that I have to go through that for legitimacy and to do the things I want to do. But at the same time, the more and more I was just like, I don't understand. So let me clarify this. I don't have a problem with the scientific research method. I know there's some people that have issues with certain things, and certain issues of not privacy or integrity, but just issues of harm and different things like that. But that's not my beef. I fully believe in the scientific research method. I believe in having a hypothesis and wanting to know an answer, and like going about it in a structured way to study to get some type of data and information. I'm down with that. I'm a big assessment person. They ride close together, even though they're not the same. So I'm down with that. And I don't really have a problem with citations. So for me, as somebody that writes and reads and sees these things, I completely understand that if you're using someone else's words or you're using someone else's ideas, that you want to give credit to it, and so that it doesn't come off as you made it up. That part I get. After that, this is where my big beef comes in, because that's how I always understood it until grad school. And now that I've gone through grad school, I've seen that it's, especially in scholarly writing, that it is not so much about giving people credit It's about giving yourself legitimacy or giving credit or credence to your actual work. And that part I don't understand whatsoever, because people or professors and, people, colleagues, they will look to say, and one of the first things they will say, especially professors, how many sources. And people that came up in the research or in fields of study that do a lot of research, it's like, okay, you gotta have a paper with this many sources, that many sources. And I'm just like, why? Like, if I'm not using that many sources, then I'm not using that many sources. Why is it that I'm working up to that number? It reminds me a lot of business when we write papers. And, well, not business, but before I got into business classes, we would write papers and it'd be like, you got to have 1,500 words, or you got to have 3 pages, or it's got to be 10 pages, all that. And then when I got to business, it was complete opposite. It was a flip thing. And that's kind of when they start going to this thing of concise. It was like you have a maximum of 700 words, or you have a maximum of 1 page. And that business really started that flip where it was like, well, in business, you want to be concise, but also in just education, period, it's a lot harder to show that you can articulate a point with limited, a room to fluff it up. And to me, I'm like, okay, I get that. That makes sense to me. And so same thing with these academic papers. I'm just like, why is it that I have to work up to a number of resources or a number of references or whatever? And I do get on some level, it's like, okay, so you can know what's out there, blah, blah, blah. But still, to me, I just don't get that. And it does depend on what you're doing. Some of it can change. But for the most part, the stuff that I had to write, I just did not understand why that was the case. And so on top of that, once again, it gets to this idea that what I'm saying is not valuable unless somebody else said it. And so I seen feedback on papers I've done and stuff like that about sources or reference or literature, blah, blah, blah. Where's a study you could use for this? And I'm like, okay, I kind of wrote it out. But one of my last assignments, the feedback, that's almost all it was. And it wasn't like we got a bad grade on it, but all the feedback was just whatever I said. And then this was a hypothetical situation. So it wasn't anything real, wasn't real research. It wasn't real, anything. It was a hypothetical kind of scenario where we were creating something. And so everything that we said was just, who else said that? Or where did you get that from? Or is there a theory that talks about that? Is there literature on this? What about an article on this? What about a book on this? Who else? Who supports that? And I'm like, why do you care? Why do you care? It kind of boiled over to the point where like, I'm going to talk about this because the more I think about it, it just does not make sense, especially in certain areas. And even for me, honestly, with research, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Unless I'm doing research that is a spinoff of somebody's research, then I don't see why I have to. Like, there should be option for you to do literature review and to base it off all these different things, but I shouldn't have to do anything if it doesn't concern these people. And so it blows my mind, because at the end of the day, it is so limiting. Because even if you read what was said and you read the content, you could have been like, wow, this is great content, to at the end of the day be like, but it's not supported by anything, so that's all I care about. Or even worse, you never even get to the content. All you do is look for sources. And I've had sometimes where professors will grade a paper and get to the reference list and be like, oh man, I thought you had way more sources the way you used it in the paper. And I'm like, no, those are all accounted for. And they just seem disappointed or something. And it's like, but that's just the number. And it wasn't like I didn't have enough sources, but it was like, oh, I thought it was more. And, you know, and it's like, who cares? It's how I used it. Even if it was one source, it's how I used it and what it actually means towards the content. But that never became a discussion. It was just, oh, how many sources do you got? How did you quote it right and all this? And did you cite it right? And I'm just like, that blows my mind because we put big work into this project and it's very creative. But the only thing the professor could talk about is who else said that. What if nobody said that? What if I just said that? Is that a possibility that I just created something? And it gets me because I've seen it in other areas, not even in class, like in work and actual things that I try to do. Like, I get it. Like, I'm a creator. I create a lot of different things. I'm a writer. I do those things. And so it's in me to be innovative. It's not in me to just copy and follow the herd. And so when I do things and the first thing people say is, well, where'd you get that? Or who else is saying that? I don't know. I don't care. And I mean, it is not always that I don't know, but I'm like, a lot of times, nobody. I came up with this. Now, if you want to talk to me about my rationale of how I arrived to it, then let's talk about that. But don't just dismiss it because somebody else didn't say it. And most of the time, even if I put in sources, they're not going to check those sources. Like, it just blows. Like, it is just such an arbitrary thing. So I could put in a resource from a study and the study could be horrible. The actual results could be terrible and everything else. They're not going to check it. They're just going to be like, oh, somebody else said it. Okay, cool. That's the message I get. The message is it doesn't matter what you think or say if nobody else said it or if nobody else is backing it up. And that's crazy to me because you automatically dismiss. First of all, you hamper creativity. So now, and I see it a lot, and sometimes it's just laziness, but I see it a lot. People don't want to create new things. They don't want to branch out into new things. They just want to remix and recycle what other people have done because they know that's easier for them to get a check on or like a pass on. It's like, oh, okay, yep, that's perfectly within the structure, so you're good. And so now you just handcuff creativity. And then secondly, you just perpetuate the structure in the system once again. And to me, it's just so annoying, especially in some areas where people talk so much about how they want to be progressive and they want to change the structures. And all you doing are adding to the structure. And so I get it. Look, I get it. You have to go through that. And like I said earlier in the beginning, I'm going to jump through those hoops myself because I want my doctorate. And I have to do that because that's the system in place. But I would like to think that when I'm on the other side of that, I can start doing things in my own way to bump against that a little bit and to allow other people to come up in a different way. But And again, it's very contextual. I get there's definitely certain things. And like I said, at the end of the day, you should always give people credit if you're using their ideas. And there's certain things where it does make sense to be really fortified. But at the end of the day, it just is what it is. Like, I was talking to a friend and I equated it to this. And maybe this is why it pisses me off, because I write like movie ideas. I wouldn't call them full scripts, but I write out movie outlines. I'll say that. And I've read movie scripts and all that. And I watch writers talk about their movies. Never once did you hear a studio say, all right, give me a script about this movie and I need a literature review on it too. I need to know everything that influenced you. Like, as a writer, you can be influenced by something you saw across the street. You could be influenced by something your family did. You can be influenced by another movie. You can be influenced by the book. You could research a book to add to the whatever. They're not going to be like, okay, give me a literature review of everything that you looked into to make this script. That's not going to happen. The studio's not going to be like, okay, good script, but you don't have 10 references, so we're going to get rid of that. You know what I mean? Or I talk to other people that write, or you see Hollywood writers, they talk to other people that write. They don't be like, oh man, yeah, I read the script. I think you should look into these sources as well, or you need to quote me because we talked about this. Like, they don't do that. It's free flowing. It's art influencing art. And I think, honestly, education holds itself on a pedestal sometimes where it doesn't need to be. Not to say that it needs to be loose, but the structure is just too much. And so, I think especially when you're talking about law and facts, I get that. You need the utmost evidence and everything else. But when I'm writing these papers, I'm not telling you about gravity. I'm not telling you a fact about how the human brain works. I'm not telling you any of that. I'm talking about things that are largely informal theories. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter about all these theories in social science. People are going to operate on their informal theories. They're going to operate on what they see and what they believe. And you can continue to inform it by reading other stuff. But at the end of the day, you're not going to go by the book. Okay, here's the model, so you have to do this, this, this. No, you're going to go by what you have witnessed and what you have collected into your mind. And so when I'm talking about an informal theory, whether it's research-based, whether it's just an academic paper, what if it's an article or anything, I do not get just this gatekeeper mentality of, oh, well, it doesn't have, no one else signed off on it, so basically it's not good. Like, that just, it kills so much information that could be passed. And we talk so much about what information is legitimized, what information gets to pass, and we're silencing voices. This is silencing voices. This is literally silencing voices. And so, without ranting on that too much, I will get around to the point, okay, well, why is that? Now, I'm going to go ahead and play by the rules that everybody sets up. There are articles, there are studies that talk about the business of academic publishing and scholarly academic writing. And what you realize is there is a lot of financial benefit in keeping the structures in place. And so, again, like I said earlier, professors and other people just turn into more gatekeepers. They just turn into more people perpetuating the structure that's already there. And it's like, well, what do you benefit of doing that? You benefit financially because you set up the rules. You tell people how you control the legitimacy. And so with social media and a lot of the internet, things have changed a little bit. And I think there's good and bad. There is good to the access, but there is bad in that journalism is not as integral and it's not as protected as it used to be. But I understand that those gatekeepers sometimes are necessary. But at the end of the day, it is about that almighty dollar, because you get to say that, hey, okay, Terry, I've created this thing, and I have created things, but I created this thing. Terry, you created this thing, and it's great. We actually looked at it. It's great. However, no one's going to take you seriously. No one's going to consider it legit unless you type up this paper our way, in our font. If you have the hanging indentation right here, if you have this source, if you write it in this structure, if you get a PhD this way, and only way that this will get out into the world and be of use is if you come through us. And that's not 100% how it works, but that's very accurate to how it is, where you own the court. You own the court, and you get to tell people how to play the game. And it's very lucrative for you to be able to do that. There have been push, like in any business and politics that have been pushed by other alternative areas, and they get stomped out. Because not only is it profitable for the people that make the money, but then all those people that get legitimized through jumping through the hoops, they want to protect the system and the structure as well, because that keeps them legitimate. And so now everybody that jumps through the hoops to get into the system is benefiting off staying, or having the system stay. And you get, I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You get kind of this house slave mentality where, and maybe that's extreme, but it reminds me of that, where you just really are protecting the thing that A, doesn't care about you that much, and B, isn't really doing you that much great. And so that's how I feel about it. At the end of the day, it is about the money. It is about, controlling the narrative and getting to control what comes out. Because you got to think, much like before we had accreditation bodies for colleges, or even if we got rid of them right now, and it was like, well, you can get a degree from it. Like Terry opened up Terry University down the street, and his degree's legit. And so if you can have PhDs out here, or you can have research out here, and I get it. I get that could become problematic, but that doesn't mean that just because it's not exactly what we want, that it isn't worth looking into. And I think the idea of scholars keeping scholars in check, as far as validity to their research and whatnot, is good, but it's a broken system. And not to use quotes from other people, but that's what it is. Because there's even reports, again, here we go, backing it up. There's reports or studies that were done about how so many of these quote unquote scholarly research methods can't be reproduced, and those results can't be reproduced. And that supposedly is the whole point of going through all these hoops to make sure the research is legit. And you can't even reproduce that research. And so this, because I just talked about this, it reminds me of this conversation I was talking about with grades. Just because you have an A, there is no guaranteed correlation that you actually know that information. And so just because you jumped through the hoops and did the research, and you did it the way they said, and your professor was worried about the font size and the spacing, that does not equate to you actually doing good research or actually contributing anything that's worthwhile. And so, again, I see this as a problem on two folds: holding the creativity back and keeping the structure in place. And it's just frustrating. I just want to put my beef out there. And I didn't think I was that mad about it, but that last assignment really burnt me up. And again, we got a good grade. It kills me. And maybe it kills me even more when someone looks at it and like, this is great. And then the powers that be say, yeah, but it's not legit because other people didn't say it. Like, I'm not a follower. I'm just not like that. I can obviously use resources to support things and do things, but I'm not a follower. I'm not somebody that's going to be like, well, okay, I have to only do what other people have already said, or I have to only look into things that are already quote unquote legit. And I get that you don't always have to agree with them. It could be like, hey, I looked at this study and it helped me realize what I don't agree with. Like, I get it. I get that happens. But by and large, again, it is not just people really looking into the sources and the references and understanding your complete picture. It's a lot of times just, okay, do you have references? Does it look the way it's supposed to look? And that's about it. And that's just frustrating. So anyway, I'm done with my rant. Go to the comment section. Let me know what you think. Share it around. Get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and until next episode.